Hey everyone, welcome to Sales and Cigars. I'm your host, Walter Crosby with Helix Sales Development. Today's episode is chock full of value for your business owners, for your sales leaders, and for salespeople. We talk about why sales training is a waste of resources when we don't have the key components in place before we do it. My guest, Derek Baer, is part of Kurlan Associates. He is a guy that's got a great work ethic going back to when he was a kid. He understands how to communicate with people, and we just have this great conversation where we're just dropping all these tips. Derek is sharing his philosophy. He's sharing his approach. He's sharing these little tips for CEOs and for VPs of sales and for salespeople. So go grab a cocktail, grab a cigar, strap in for another impactful episode of Sales and Cigars. Thanks. So Derek, welcome to Sales and Cigars. I appreciate you taking some time out of your schedule.
Thank you very much for having me, and I am grateful to be here.
I've been looking forward to this when we had the conversation when we were in Miami. I've been kind of thinking about trying to reach out to you, and it's like, I'm going to see him. So I'm glad you agreed to do this. Appreciate it. I've been looking forward to it.
Me as well.
So let's start off. I always like to ask the same question: like, is there a book that you gift or you reread on a regular basis?
So I'm going to give you, and I hope this doesn't mess anything up. So we have no script. So the first book that I read the most is, or that I've read the most and gifted for someone to take something from it and put it into application, is going to be How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. That's just bar none for anybody that has any social anxiety and feels any sort of discomfort about, what do I say? How do I handle this situation? I'm not going to dive too far into it, but it is the art of asking people about themselves, which no one cares about anything else more than talking about themselves. And you will be the most interesting person in the room. And then this is really important for me to share. The one that I've gifted or purchased the most is the 5-minute journal.
Oh my God.
So this is not, are you familiar with this?
I got a story, but go ahead. I absolutely love that. How did you come to that?
I had heard about it, I think it was probably 2016 in a podcast. I just heard about the gratitude journal. And then I stumbled upon this, and as soon as I fill it out, I purchase a new one. It's on repeat in Amazon for me. And without question, I have gifted that to the most people. Yeah. It is great for people going through tough times. It's great for people going through good times. And it sets the precedent of, when you wake up, we can get caught up in the head trash and the bullshit of everything that's negative going on around us. But when you really simplify things, there are at least 3 things that you can be grateful for. When you set an intention for the day, it gives you a guide. And my caveat here is, as important as it is to fill out in the morning, and I don't do the best job of this, but you must fill it out in the evening. Yes. No matter what happened in the day, when you reflect back on it, at least 3 things have happened. And it could be the smallest thing, like having a moment and watching a bird in the forest. And it could be something that touches you in a way that you realize the simplicity of life. There's just so much beauty to it. And when you look at what you accomplished in the day, big or small, you did make forward progress. And I think all too often we get caught up in this big pie in the sky goal, and any big pie in the sky goal is going to be taken down by little steps. And this is a really good way, when we talk about sales, to monitor your metrics of progress and the goodness that comes in every day. So that's my little spiel.
I love it. You're the first to bring that up. And it's incredibly it's everything you said is 100% on it. We can get ourselves into asking ourselves some bad questions. We can get down on ourselves real quick, especially if we're trying to be high performers and we're trying to push the envelope. That journal um, forces you to stop, and sometimes you got to really think about the little bird that you saw in the bird feeder or in the path in the woods, or the moment that you had with that little dog that was walking down, right? You just saw him, or the squirrel that saw you. Like we have bird feeders all over our yard. And sometimes it's the squirrel, like, you're not supposed to be in there, dude. You're really not supposed to be in there. But it's
Yeah.
like you made a little connection with this little animal.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's little.
Yeah.
I did a couple of these over a course of over 2 years, and then I decided to do something because I noticed something in my journaling at night, especially at night, that I would say something about my wife, something that she did. So I made this thing the day after Thanksgiving. We would go to Florida with my daughter and my wife, and so I made a decision out that next day, that Friday, I would start a new journal, and it was all about her. The morning was like what I wanted to do for the day, and then what are the three things that I really captured, that I need to be grateful for about her. Changed a lot of things within the relationship, and what was really cool is that the next Thanksgiving, I gave her the journal,
Oh, that's awesome.
and she's not one to go to tears. And she started flipping through it. She goes, "This is all about me." And I'm like, it's about us. It's about you. It's about the kid. It's about all the things that happen. But it's like, I don't tell you these things enough, but I'm cognizant of everything that you do. Um, and it's a really cool thing to anybody that's listening to really think about that one or two things that your spouse does for you, or your friend, right? That helps you get through get through the day, get through the week. It's a really powerful journal.
I don't know if you noticed this, because we, as complex beings, we're actually very simple. And I don't know if you noticed this pattern, but the three things that would make my day great were all really simple, and it seemed to repeat itself every day. Like I wasn't jumping around saying, "Oh, I wish I would do this or that." It was very consistent. And when we remove the glamorous, or the glamour and the glitter and everything that we can see in the media as what should be important to us, especially as people in the United States, my shit is so simple. Like, for me to have a great day, it is very, very simple. And I don't know if you had that experience as well.
It uh, yes, and what was happening, I started to notice when I did the first one, it was like there's a lot of the same things here.
Yeah.
And I reached out to the guys that were responsible for this because I came to this through Tim Ferriss. He's the one who sort of recommended this at one of his, I don't know, one of the things I read from him. And I reached out to the guys who produced the journal, and they're like, "That's normal. Like you're having the right kind of patterns. You're seeing the right kind of things." Because, and I got like a really long email that was incredibly encouraging to think about. Like, you're looking at these simple little things that really make you happy. So why are we worried about all these other things?
Right.
Right. And I mean, I got a little lesson out of his response, but you're right. Just the getting up and seeing a sunrise, or having some solitude with a cup of coffee, watching the woods come to life. I live in the woods, right? So watching these animals all kind of come about. It was that was one of the things that I kept repeating. Like, just seeing that was incredibly grateful. And then I get off, and I can tell you that I haven't done one in a couple of years, and that might be the thing that I need to do, because I've gotten to be kind of negative, about myself, right? That mindset issue. That one of the things that we'll probably talk about here, but that's a great. I love it. It's a great gift for somebody, because you're really giving them this gift of gratitude. It's awesome, Derek.
I might have, I might know where my next gifted book is going. So I'll ask you for your address after this. Make sure you find yourself a copy.
Um, I appreciate that. So let's talk a little bit about like how you got to where you are. I mean, you're the top of the echelon in the sales world, right? You're what we call elite. And like walk me through like how the hell you get there? How do you build that?
I think if we were to go way back, and I'll speed through it, I think that work ethic was instilled at a young age from my parents. So I think the first thing that I was really selling, like is in my own little business, was I can remember in high school, actually, so before that, I was a caddy at a golf course and I would get tips. I was 13 years old. And that started to influence my, I wouldn't say love for money, but my enjoyment of going out and socializing and making people laugh and having a good time with them, and seeing that I could, the more effort I put into it, or the better I listened, or the more questions I would ask. And a story that would, maybe you'll get a kick out of this. My mom remembers me coming back at 13 years old, and I would ask each golfer or each group, I would find someone in the group and ask them what they did: doctor, lawyer, highway patrolman. And I would say, that's what I want to do. Can you tell me more about that? Every time. So I would have all these, A, I would have all these career ideas, but B, this was, no one taught me this. I don't know why this came to me, but I got in the habit at a young age of just asking really detailed questions about, similar to Dale Carnegie's book, about what people care about. And so with tips, I turned that into a like small business wiring subwoofers in high school. And from there, I continued to work. And for whatever reason, I don't think this was always a good thing, but I've always had to work. Like it just, I didn't feel good not working. So I played baseball in junior college, and I was the captain of the baseball team, and I was washing dishes on the weekend at an Italian restaurant. So just work ethic. And I think, I know for sure on this, the work ethic that I continued to put in, and not necessarily being the most talented with selling, but being willing to do the most and do the most repetitions. And we'll get into commitment finding, but having high commitment to doing whatever it takes to learn or to be successful, that started to show, I would say, when I got into my late 20s. I started to see more recognition for it within the sales world. And then I had been introduced to Kurlan Associates in 2014 when I was a participant in a sales training. And we'll talk about sales training and how it sticks or how it doesn't stick today. But for me, I could see that other people within the group, within the webinar, within the sales kickoff, some of them were rolling their eyes because they had nothing to learn and they were too good. And I was soaking this shit up. It was everything I ever wanted. Like, this was as close to Jedi mind tricks as I could get. So I was just eating it. Like, tell me more, tell me more, tell me more. And it was during COVID. I reached out to the person who had trained me, and that was Dennis Connolly. And I just asked, how did you get started? And at what age do I need to be to get started? And then a few interviews with Dave, and I was on the team. And that was 3 years ago, I believe this month.
That's an awesome story. And I can tell you kind of, you, that arc was a lot deeper. You kind of cut through that. But that, if you notice, what you were doing as a caddy talking to those golfers is exactly what you were doing when you went to Dennis. Like, how do you do this? What's it all about? Right. You just dove into that. And I call that, in sales, I think one of the most important things is having curiosity about the people you're talking to. Whether that's a prospect, a person you're coaching, person you're training, customer, because you're right, nobody gives a shit about us.
Not at all.
They really, like, you go to a cocktail party, you go to a networking event. My response to, hey, what do you do for a living? It's like, yeah, nobody cares. What do you do? And they don't want to listen to what I had to say anyway, right? They give me everything that they want, and they never come back and ask, what it is I do, because that's all they wanted to do is tell me what they do.
I was
And
going to say, do you notice they take the bait almost every time? It's not like, no, 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 I'd love to know. They're like, oh, okay, well, anyway, this is what I do. And then it's bound down
one
that
time,
road.
one time did somebody come back to that, and that person was a very competent salesperson, because he was trying to do the same thing I was trying to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that makes us interesting, popular. That you walk away and those people think, wow, he's an interesting guy, and I said nothing. They know nothing about me.
Right.
And what other thing that it does is gives us an opportunity to figure out if that person is somebody that I do want to spend time with in the future, or if that's somebody that might be a candidate or might be a center of influence for me, without me having to do anything other than just listen. So that curiosity, you had it as a kid, right? And when you combine curiosity with a work ethic, that is, just a driver,
Mhm.
those things with that ability to listen and keep asking questions and digging in. It's probably one of the things I'm most proud of with our daughter. I'm not sure how much I had to do with it, but the kid has a work ethic. Um, and everybody that she's worked with that I know as she was growing up, they were like, we need more of her. She just, we don't have to tell her what to do. She just goes and figures it out and does it. Um, and that's going to get you with a work ethic and the ability to ask questions. Um, the Dale Carnegie thing, I want to go back to that. Um, like, how did you get that the first time? Who told you to read that, or who gave that to you to read?
I don't know. I actually don't know. Um, I remember I remember where I was when I read it. I just don't. It may have been, if I were to put my finger on anything, it may have come from Tim Ferriss, but I'm not certain.
Yeah,
And I don't know if you recall, but that book, and I love this about the book, and most people probably did not do it, but if you recall, the book requires you, I'm using air quotes, but requires you to read each chapter twice before moving on. So it really sinks in. And it doesn't matter how long ago the book was written. People, I mean, you can look back at Stoicism and the journals of Marcus Aurelius, and we're still humans. Like, we still have a brain that is hardwired to be similar to hundreds of years ago. So the things about that book, it just really stood out to me. And putting myself, or frequently being in social situations, I was able to, if you want to call it like my life lab, put it into practice and see it work immediately. And I was just awestruck at how effective it was. I remember being at a client dinner, actually. Um, and I remember the client wanting to invite his wife, and she was great. And I was just using very simple principles from that book. And I remember him apologizing to me after and saying, I don't know what got into her. I've never heard her talk like this. And all I was doing was I just kept asking, tell me about that. Oh, and when did you do this? And how'd that make you feel? That's exciting. I bet it was like this. And it just, for 2 hours, she filled the room and filled the table with conversation. So I was able to see that it worked, and I continued to use it. But
yeah.
yeah, I'm not sure exactly where it came from.
The basic principles are allow us to, um, have sort of a framework to actively listen. I think is a good way to look at that.
Mm-hmm.
So you you were in a several sales jobs. You've been selling, really, when you as a caddy, that's all you're doing is
Mm-hmm.
really selling and listening and talking to people and absorbing, and all of those things and that work ethic. You know, getting the Kurlan Associates at a, because you're on the younger side of that group, right?
Mm-hmm.
You bring the average age down a little bit
I think so.
in the
Just a
room.
little bit. Yeah. Just a little bit.
Not quite as much gray hair. No offense, Dave or
Yeah.
Dennis, or Chris. But I mean, and those are some pretty solid, smart, experienced sales guys. So I mean, you can just, even in a huddle, you can learn just by listening to to those guys, and they've uh, the experiences that they've had, those stories that they can tell. You can just sit there and soak those up and get better and better and better. It's a huge opportunity, but they don't bring people on without belief that they're going to do the job, commitment, desire, responsibility, right? All of those things are a given. Um, so I kind of want to pivot a little bit
Mm-hmm.
and talk a little bit about coaching and training, and how mindset sort of fits into that. We call it sales DNA. For those of in the audience, you know, Derek's working with Kurlan Associates. Dave Kurlan is really the founder, the brains behind what started OMG and the assessments and the tools that are there today to help us look at a sales team and get a look at what's going on in their head and where their skills are. And the thing that interests me, in from a coaching perspective, is how we can deal with those 6 competencies in the sales DNA and getting that right before we go do training. So I'm just kind of curious. I know it's sort of a bit of a ramble, but it gives you some space to think about when you're approaching a client and you've done the analysis and you have a team and you understand strengths and weaknesses. What at a high level, what are you thinking about when you're going to go start to work with them from a training perspective? Let's assume they have a process in place that makes some sense. Let's assume that they have some level of accountability, and we want to get them up to speed. Like where do we go?
So if you had asked me this question 2 years ago, I would give you a very different answer. And this may not answer the DNA or the belief system question that you're asking, but as far as approaching a new client, a new sales team, as far as approaching my go-to battle strategy.
Oh, I love that battle strategy.
Yeah, as far as sales training and sales development goes, my first concern, the first thing that I need to address, the first thing that I want to be sure we're all on the same page about, that I need to iron out, is accountability from the top down. Without that, CEO top, there cannot be a single break. If there's a break within, let's say the CEO is bought in and he passes it off to the VP of sales to handle, and the VP's bought in, but the VP doesn't hold the sales managers accountable. Maybe there is a lack of respect for the sales managers to the VP. Maybe the VP doesn't feel confident in holding their feet to the fire. Sales training won't work. It just won't work. And I'm sure there's an example. There's always an exception to the rule, but just like this book or the journal, the 5-minute journal, we're talking about how great it is. It doesn't do a fucking thing if you don't fill it out.
Right.
Dale Carnegie's book, one of the best books. I couldn't recommend it more. Anybody that wants to get better at dealing with people, go read it. You could have 100,000 people listen to this. Maybe 300 will actually read it. That's just what I'm picking up on. And when we're looking at human beings, there's 2 things that most human beings have in common or have a disdain for. And one is they don't like change, and they also don't like the way things are. So now we're fucked again. And if I don't have buy-in, it's just not going to sink in. And the salesperson, unless they dislike their sales manager, which that can happen, for sure, that can happen. But most of the time they are by committee bought into the sales manager, because why would they swim upstream or create any rifts with their sales manager? They're not going to buy into what I have to say if the sales manager is telling them that they're not bought in. So that is not, I apologize, that's not down the sales DNA spectrum. But most important
you're
thing,
on point. You're really you're a step ahead of this. Like those are real issues.
These
Right?
are the biggest issues. And that I would attribute it, we'll take it back to the will to sell finding. There has to be commitment company wide, or like for this really to work, and this will make, CEOs cringe, some cringe, but to really make it work, they have to be willing to do the hard things like pulling the plug on the problem. And most of the time, like I said, we don't really love change. And I could go into a company. This is a real story. I was working with, if we have time, are you okay if I tell you a real story? I'm going to omit names. I remember doing a sales leadership intensive and guiding this team of sales leaders on the importance of accountability, the importance of coaching, the importance of getting your team where they need to be. And I'm going to use battle ready again, so that when they go out, they can be successful on their own. This is me first getting to know this company. And this guy who is just such a fucking asshole, I just have to, I will never forget this person. He kind of puffs up and you could tell he had some insecurity issues. And he says, wait. You're telling me I gotta send them out there on their own? No, I'm a lead from the front kind of guy. I'm going in there. I'm going to make sure that they close the deal. And I'm like, okay, well, you're going to completely take away from their growth. You're taking away from their ability to do things. I'm not telling you to set them up for failure, but I am telling you to get them ready so that they don't need you. If they need you, they can call you. That's okay. You want them to be able to fly on their own. So this is my first meeting with them. And I'm thinking, okay, this must be some high performing elite sales leader. And I just don't know what I don't know. And this is about 2 years ago. So I'm newer in the business. I don't want to ruffle any feathers there. I find out this dude has missed quota 6 quarters in a row. So now what does that say about his leaders? 6 fucking quarters in a row? What is going on? Do you expect me to fix this person? This is right away an accountability issue. If you have instructed him to do things differently and he's not, and now you've brought me in and the first meeting he's disagreeing with me and getting huffy puffy and no one's going to address this, now we need to talk, because technically I am not your employee and I am not his boss. So unless you want to give me some authority here, this is going to be a problem. And they waited another 2 quarters to let him go. We want to talk about wasted money. And this, I don't want to transition too far here, but
2 years of pissing away money.
2 years of pissing away money. This guy never performed. He was a sales manager that they gave a salary. I think he was making like 160 or 170 to not perform. And we can shift into this in a second. But we have clients that bitch or complain or aren't willing to pay a very small fee for an assessment. But they are willing to pay someone for 2 years to not perform, to completely fuck up the whole sales team that he was responsible for. Bad metrics, bad coaching, leading by fear, not leading by guiding. And then the territory is completely shot for 2 years. So it's not like, oh, we didn't sell there for those 2 years. We were sliding backwards. We need to stop the backwards momentum and erase these bad behaviors before we can even get going. So I'm going to stop there because I went way over on that.
The opportunity cost of those 8 quarters is almost incalculable, right? Because you can figure out what you paid him, you can figure out what he didn't do, how much revenue was missed off the targets, but like how much did he affect your reputation, your brand within that territory, within those marketplaces? How much did he screw up those individuals by trying to be the hero instead of the hero maker? Right? Not giving them the confidence, making him have the glory, and he did a shitty job of all of it because he wasn't there.
I would say this just so we can wrap our heads around this. So the salary, that's what employers worry about. We don't want to pay out salary. The opportunity cost was somewhere around 80 million.
Wow. Oh.
80 million.
Yeah. And that's not, move a zero around, right? You could be 8 million, it could be 80 million, it could be 100,000, depending upon where it is. But it's a real number that's meaningful to that organization.
Yeah.
And it comes down to those not making those hard decisions.
Hmm.
Um, I've had I've had a habit, and sometimes it's cost me. But I'm talking to the entrepreneur, the CEO, and they're all excited. The engagement's been mapped out. Everybody's agreed to the timelines. It's all there, and like they're ready to rock and roll. And I'm like, hey, can we talk about why this won't work?
Hmm.
And they're like, well, what? Right? The whole body language changes, like because they're ready to move forward. I'm like, let me help you understand why this won't work. It's you. You are the reason why this won't work. Right? So I'm working with a smaller team with like 10 salespeople, one sales manager. And I said, what's going to happen is somebody, I don't know who yet, but somebody's going to come to you in about 45 to 60 days and say, this guy's crazy. He wants us to change what we're doing. He wants us to say things differently. He wants us to ask more questions. We've never had to do that. He wants to hold people accountable. So what happens in that moment when that person comes to you is going to make or break this engagement. And it was really wild. That guy just kind of sat back in his chair and he goes, I can tell you who that's going to be. Like, okay, good. How are you going to answer that question? Like, let's practice. And kind of role played it out. And like then I ask him, like, why is that person still here? Because they're going to be a problem. It's really wild. So I love the idea, and those of us that are listening that own a business, I don't care the size, and you got a sales team, and if you want change to happen, it's going to be bumpy. There's going to be some unpleasantness in it. There's going to be some change. You might have to roll some people out or into a different role within the organization. But inevitably, I've only been doing this, 8, 9 years. Uh, I've never run into a situation where there wasn't change. Um, and I love the other thing you said, Derek, that everybody hates change, but everybody's unhappy with the current situation,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
how do we make that bridge, right? And that's really somebody being open to the idea of trying to do something different that they
Right.
haven't done before. It's and getting them there. That's the mindset piece, right? But it starts with those people at the top,
Hmm.
that CEO. And I say, most of the CEOs I work with are guys in their mid 40s and mid 50s, and they're hard drivers, and they've done all of the sales stuff themselves, but they haven't been able to take what's clunking around in their head and put it into a coherent messaging for their sales team. um, but they're frustrated. Those are the guys that I love working with because they want to get. I'm doing 20, and I want to get to 40. Right. Sometimes you got to help them pull the reins back a little bit. Like you're not going to get to 40 tomorrow. We got
Right.
to fix a couple of things. Um, I love that. Um,
Yeah, I would double down on that. And not that I am so good that I can be picky and choosy. And um, I look at every opportunity as an opportunity to help someone grow, but also as an opportunity for me to get better because I'm going to have this resistance. But what you just said is the guy that wants to go from 20 to 40. That is the person that goes into the gym and says, I've got a bodybuilding competition that I've already paid for. I've made a bet with my friends saying I have to pay them out $5,000 if I don't walk this stage in 16 weeks, sign me up, versus the person who's coming in and like checking out what the cheapest membership is. I want to work with the person that wants to go as fast as possible. And you're right, we have to set some realistic expectations, but that's the person that has the commitment and is going to be eating up everything I say and putting it into action right away. Where the other person, there's not enough time in the day, there's not enough time in the week for me to give them change or to help them enough to where I feel like I'm doing them solid. And maybe I'm too attached to the outcome but I don't like working with anyone that they don't at the end of the day say, holy shit, we are growing so fast. This is the best thing since sliced bread. And the only disservice I'm going to do you, Derek, is I'm not going to share your information because I don't want you having or anyone else having my secret. That's what I'm going for. So I want the person that's ready to go right now. That's the goal client.
Thanks for watching another episode of Sales and Cigars. I'm looking for guests. I'm looking for really good guests who have an interesting story to tell, their entrepreneurial journey. They want to talk about something that's going great in their organization. I'm really interested in speaking to business owners and CEOs. The other type of guest I'm looking for is somebody who's got a passion for cigars, and we can do a short episode about a pairing, about a new cigar they discovered, about something around their passion of cigars. So if one of those things fits you, or you know somebody, or want to make a recommendation, shoot me an email, ping me on LinkedIn. I'd love to get some guests from the audience. Appreciate it. Thanks. So I don't think that's a negative thing. I think it is like you're I only want to work with people that really want to take it to the next level, because I want to instill value, right? If they're paying me $1, I want them to make 10 or 20 on each one of those dollars.
Yeah.
And they should be able to realize that and see it quickly if they have that level of commitment.
Yeah.
So for me, it's a positive that's why I kind of am ruthlessly disqualify, to quote our friend Nate Tudis, right? That we're going to ruthlessly disqualify those people that don't have that commitment, because it's our time, right? If we want to help people, and that's really a big driver for what we're looking to do. Sure, we want to get paid, no doubt. But if we're not actually helping people, it becomes harder and harder to do this. Because it's a tough job, as you know.
I want to get paid. I feel guilty for my own reasons if I'm getting paid and I don't show results. I am so addicted to the results that I want to double check, triple check that the buy-in is as full as it can be. And I have had, and I think this was probably 10 months ago. And this was a kind of an unusual moment for me, but I was speaking with the VP of sales at a company, and it was 8 p.m. my time, and I'm taking his call. And this had happened, this was going on, a few nights a week for a few weeks in a row. And he asked me, Derek, why are you taking my call? Why are you so committed to this? And I can't get the people that I have on salary to do their job. And I didn't have an answer other than I am addicted to seeing these things happen. I am addicted to growth. I am addicted to helping people. I remember being in a situation where I didn't have a sales process, where I didn't have a methodology, and I was the person that was just, going location to location. Hey, how's it going? Is there anything I can help you with? Have you seen this pricing? Like, I've been the worst of the worst. Yeah, just want to check in. Hey, just following up. Like, I've been the worst of the worst. And knowing the superpowers that come with a process and a good methodology, and being able to listen, being able to ask questions in a way that presents your expertise, that was the magic code that I was always waiting for. And I'm going to sound like a religious nut here, but it's like, I want to share that with everybody who wants to learn. And that's, you didn't ask me that question, but that's why I am so in love with this business. And that's what keeps me going.
It is the reason to get out of bed. It's the reason to be grateful. To me, if we're doing the right things, the money takes care of itself.
Yeah.
If we're doing the right things, there'll be opportunities that present themselves. So, I mean, it's probably we probably come from similar backgrounds in that, I had a blue collar background. It was a work ethic. I didn't know what I didn't have, and as growing up, I had everything I needed. But like, I had jobs from the time I was 12, right, all through college.
Yeah.
And it's that value that of time, that value of providing value, and just trying to coach a group of teenagers that I kind of, it's a loosely mentorship program, but it's like, if you want to get a raise, don't go ask for the raise. Go ask for, how can I be of more value to this organization? How can I add more value to the team? Right. And that's the right question to ask. It isn't
Right.
about, give me more money, please. It's about, what can I do to get there? And it's a mindset shift of how we were brought up. And then you get the driver, you just want to keep going and getting better. I think there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with not wanting to work with people that don't want to kick it into the next gear. They don't all have to be A players, but they all should be looking for reasons, because sales is tough. It's a slight edge, right, for us to win or lose. And if we're not looking for what that edge is, um, we're not doing our job. My not
You saying the A player thing, and I can think back to even middle school sports, and now it's clicking with me. It's resonating a little bit more. But I remember a coach yelling at us, "I don't care how fucking good you are. If you don't hustle, you're out of here. And you could be the worst player on this field. If you show me hustle in and out every day, you're going to stick around." And when we're talking about they don't all have to be A players, I would love to work with a Z player that's commitment is off the charts. That's the person that's going to be the story that I'm most proud of, as opposed to the B minus player who doesn't think they need anything, that isn't coachable, that really isn't committed. And they're there because their manager said they had to participate, and they sit through my 30-minute session and go, and don't really put anything into practice. But that gave me a good visualization with sports, connecting it to the people that we work with.
You just popped something in my head. It was like sixth grade basketball, seventh grade basketball, and the coach was like, whenever there was a guy on the other team who was like their elite player, because I was like the sixth or seventh guy in basketball, right? I could barely dribble, and shooting wasn't my thing, but I could play defense. And he would tell me to get in there and go stop him from doing what he's doing, right? And I'd go in and I'd get, create fouls and be aggressive, but I threw him off his game. And it's sort of like how, whether it was tennis or golf, there was that mentality, right? That you're always trying to hustle a little bit more than the other people, even on the golf course, right? Because I'm playing the course, but there's still that competitiveness with the knuckleheads I'm playing with, even though they're my friends.
Yeah.
I still want to have that, make that 15-foot putt when they miss their 12-foot putt.
Right.
But yeah, and that's the rub. Is there? So if we want to give a piece of advice here, so you got a CEO who is struggling to get their team held accountable. They're struggling to get their team headed in the right direction. And he's got the wrong people on the team, right? You do the analysis, and three of the five just don't have the commitment, don't have the desire. You got too many other challenges. Are you telling them? I'm just curious about myself. How does Derek think about that? Do we want to give those people a shot, or do we just want to clear house? What's your thought there?
That's a really good question. I firmly believe that commitment can change when the pupil, if you will, believes in the teacher. And I have seen low commitment in the past when they didn't get any value from their leader, or they didn't feel like they would do anything more because they didn't know what else to do. So I can have my doubts, but I table them. And I like to do a check-in at about 6 weeks to see, like, we assign homework, we ask questions, we look for participation. If we're not getting it, or if we're getting someone that's combative, I am very quick to pull the ripcord, no question. I will also talk to the CEO or the leader about being relentless in the pursuit of excellence. And when you have someone weighing you down, I'm not always right, but when it comes to this, I'm rarely wrong. You can let them hang on for 9 months, 12 months. I can think of a specific person that the CEO knew probably wasn't going to make it, but they always had that deal in the pipeline that was just going to hope. Yeah, this one's going to pop. And if they're a really nice guy, they've been around, people like them. I knew they weren't going to make it after 6 weeks, and they waited, I believe, 12 months. And when the 12 months came, it's like going through a breakup when you know it's going to go bad, but you kind of put it off. Like, maybe we'll make it work. Let me try this. We're going to take a vacation. Let me try hanging out with my buddies a little bit less. And you know it's not going to work. You got to do it at your own time. But I really want to do a gut check with the CEO about how serious they are to doing whatever it takes within reason and ethically to get to the goal that we both set. Because I don't want to be the one towing the line and then have the CEO not show up for their team to hold them accountable. And now I'm battling. And as you know, this could be a sales team of 50 people. And it feels like I'm battling 50 people because leadership isn't bought in. So I want to make sure that everyone's moving with me and we're going step for step. And sometimes I might be a little bit ahead and I'll wait for them to catch up. That's fine. But I don't want to be 60 paces ahead and looking back, and they're not going to follow.
But it goes back to what you said at the very beginning, Derek, about if we don't have the commitment from that CEO, we don't have the commitment from the sales leader that this is going to change. There's going to be changes going to be required. We need accountability. If they're not there, if they don't have that level of commitment, it is going to just not work. Mm-hmm. And I look at, we do the same thing with the analysis on the front end. And like these 3 people, I did this on Monday. These 3 people have some significant challenges. They're here. You've had them employed here for a while. Would you hire them again, knowing what you know now? Oh, no. It was everybody in the room. No. Okay. But you have them here now. So if we're going to do this, then what we need to do is set some really firm expectations and check in a month. And if they haven't really moved the needle, then you have to commit that they won't be here in 90 days. If they're not making some kind of incremental progress, they're not hitting those expectations. And they're like, well, that's going to be really hard. And I'm like, okay.
I like that.
It will be. And but it goes back to the thing you said at the beginning, commitment, mm-hmm. Right? Is it right for them to sit around here and flounder? Is it right for your company, the brand? We could talk about how much money you're going to lose. That'll be really painful. That'll be more painful than you having to say, look, you're in the wrong spot. Do what you can to help them, right? Find another gig, but this isn't the right spot. But let's try.
Right.
Let's really dig in and really focus on that. But if they're not willing to make the change, then you have to. It's weird to watch the room kind of get uncomfortable with that.
I like that. And the other piece so we're talking about opportunity cost, and we're talking about having people that don't perform, but there's many layers to the issues with an underperformer. If they're still around, it means to some degree they're likable. So they probably have some colleagues that like them, even though they're not performing. So now you've got someone that is planting negative seeds and talking shit. And this is another finding that you and I are very familiar with, but responsibility. They're always going to come up with an excuse. I've seen this play out too many times. An excuse for what got in the way and why they weren't able to get things done. And that just festers. And you want to get that pulled out as soon as possible, but it sends a message. And I don't think that anyone should be performing out of fear. I mean, we can go back to sports. Like, it's like playing hurt. That's not the goal here. But when you remove the bottom performer, it sends a message to the team that things are changing. And the person that was just above the bottom performer, now their ass is on the line. And that's okay, because someone that wants it, they're going to perform and they're going to toe the line back up. But when and this is, I guess, just a tip for any CEO that doesn't know this, but when you look at the talent acquisition or the hiring portion or recruiting portion of the sales team, I've yet to work with a company that is regularly hiring. They're always reactive. And that's what makes it so difficult to let people go, is because they know it's going to take something like 90 days and they're going to have to hire this person. And it's somewhat of a gamble. And there's probably more to it, that they have a shitty onboarding plan. And there's a lot of finger pointing that goes around. Fear of letting this person go because what could happen. But if they were to be consistently recruiting and always just slow trickling someone in, let's say every quarter they let go the bottom performer. And this isn't the bottom performer that was just onboarded, but someone that's had their time to prove themselves. I would hate for it to breed a culture of fear. But if you're a performer, you wouldn't be living in that fear. And you're going to consistently have new performers coming in that provide that camaraderie and that healthy competition, and the company just grows. And that's how you get a company, or that's how you get a culture of A players. And when you set a baseline that your top performer right now, and we can use the role specifications with the assessment, if your top performer right now is your future baseline, beautiful things are going to happen with your team. You are going to breed a dream team culture, and whatever revenue targets you had in mind, you're going to blow them out of the water. Yeah. That's my thoughts on that. But
no, those are great, because that is a big problem. They're reactive, not proactive. It stops them from, because what they're doing is accepting mediocrity, right? Because the other side of that coin that you're talking about is like, this fear of not replacing people, the fear of, that guy's liked, and if once you set the bar a little bit higher, and we're not going to accept this anymore, everybody else is like, oh, okay, we need to work and get better. And if you're providing them the help to get better, they're more likely to navigate to that help to go get themselves better, right? We're giving them the opportunity to step up, and we're letting them know that mediocrity is no longer acceptable, and the train is leaving the station, and we're going in this direction. The train it's going to be a beautiful scenery. There's a bar car on the train. It's all going to be great.
Yeah.
Right. But
yeah,
it's leaving. So get on. Right. Because once you get on and it's going, and you have to jump off, it's going to hurt.
Yeah. It's going to be a rough landing.
Yeah. So I absolutely love this conversation, because we're giving that business owner, that CEO, some things to think about that's going to change their mind. Because what I really like, one of my little tags that I kind of talk about a lot, is to think differently about sales, to think different about the sales conversation, to think different about how we hire people, think different about how we evaluate people. Allowing somebody to go 6 quarters without hitting a number, that's not their fault. It's like a parent allowing their children to run amok, right?
Yeah.
Like they allow their kids to run around the dining room table, come up, grab some food, run back, and the family's trying to eat, and then they go out to dinner and they're surprised that the kid acts like a crazy person at a restaurant.
Yeah.
It's not the kid's fault. It's the 2 adults that are sitting there on their phone, more than likely, not paying attention to anything.
Right.
Now I'm doing what Kurlan does, get a little political there, but
no, it's
real.
It is real.
How many times do you go out and you look around the restaurant, and a whole family is on their phone?
Too many.
They're spending money on having a nice dinner out, and they're not paying attention to each other.
You've got a family of 4, and they're in 4 different worlds.
Scary.
It is scary.
I
think we're in a lot of trouble, and this is where I am starting to recognize my age, as I feel like I'm saying things that my grandpa said. The future is completely fucked. Like no question. No question. Like it is going to be a beyond disaster. I live in Seattle, and this is a Seattle thing, but I think it comes with, and I'm pointing like this because I'm looking out at Amazon and Google right now. I'm downtown. this is a culture where you don't say hi to people. You're in the same elevator and everyone looks down at their phone. I don't know if you've been hearing of this. I did not coin this terminology, but it's a real thing. We have younger BDRs and SDRs coming up in a world where they're expected to pick up the phone and they've never made a phone call before. It's called telephonobia. I didn't know that was a real term, but they don't know how to talk to people on the phone. And you want to know the best practice that I ever got, and you were fortunate. I'm the elder of the millennials, so I still had the benefit of using a landline. But the toughest cold call to reach a decision maker was when you had to call a girl's house and ask their dad if they were home so you could take them on a date. Now you can bypass that because you don't even have to get their number. You can find them on Instagram or Facebook and send them a message. Like there's no confidence. And now we've got this culture of people that don't feel good about themselves and they're depressed and they have nothing to show because they're being babied and taken care of and no one has to do a fucking thing. Like I'm going on my own rant right now, but this is a real problem.
It is. And you do sound like a grandfather. That is
it's blowing my mind.
100%. I have one daughter, and having a boy like not look you in the eye, not shake your hand, not come up to the door, right? To deal with what they had to deal with. Like, Dad, you're scary. Yeah, that's part of what he needs to deal with.
This is what they have to go through. This is the gauntlet to get to you.
And like, well, I'm like, no, if he doesn't come in, you're not leaving. And she was like, texted him to come in. And when the guy came in, I'm like, what the fuck's wrong with you? Like, you think you can sit in my driveway and beep your horn?
Yeah, that's crazy.
Like, that's not how it works, dude.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't mean any disrespect, but you did.
You didn't mean any respect when you pulled up and honked, and you didn't come and acknowledge me and ask for permission and let me know that you're going to have my daughter back before the curfew that I set because you didn't even ask me. Yeah, it's just crazy times, and it's going to get worse. That's my forecast.
But here's the upside of that. If you raise a kid to have a work ethic, you raise a kid to be willing to go out there and pick up the phone and be a little bit vulnerable, they're going to win. It's so much easier to win these days.
I couldn't agree more. That's what I keep telling myself when I'm looking around. The competition is going away.
It kind of is.
It is.
It really is. Picking up a phone. Like, we both call CEOs. Mm-hmm. But I'll call around 3:30 on a Friday. Mm-hmm. And the CEO picks up the phone, and I'm like, what are you doing picking up the phone on 3:30 on Friday? And he's like, well, you called. And I'm like, what are you doing calling? And I'm like, well, before we get started, let me ask you a question. Where are your salespeople? And then boom, he's emotionally involved, right? Yeah. And like really upset. And I'm like, well, do you know where they're probably at happy hour. Like, wouldn't it be cool to go over to that bar right now and show up and see? That's a great idea. Right. And so but I have a conversation with somebody because I pick up a phone. Right. The phone's dead. Yeah. Okay. It still works. It still works. Nothing works and everything
dead
works.
With the wrong people. Unfortunately for us, it's a direct line with no traffic to contacting people who care about speaking to people. Here's a tip for the sales people listening, or for the CEO that thinks you're doing any justice by mass emails. I get 100 emails a day of junk shit that's not even really addressing me with a boilerplate statement. I don't look at it for longer than 1 second. I think I've gotten one cold call in the last 6 months, and I took it, and it went really well. It actually went really well. But if you want to get away from the traffic, or if you want to find your way to actually resonate with someone and have them say, this is different, pick up the phone. It's not that crazy of an art.
And sound different. Don't say I'm calling to check in, right? Like the guy said that to me the other day. I'm calling to check in. I'm not a fucking hotel, dude. What are you doing?
Yeah. Yeah, check in on what?
And he hung in. He hung up.
I
It's like
believe it.
a teenage boy.
I believe
That's
it.
just too scared to come into the house.
Yes, I
Um,
believe it.
I think we could have this conversation. I don't know if we're going to solve the world's problems, but I think we gave some business owners some value. I think we helped them see that there's some things that they can think a little differently about. Um, so I'm going to have your your data in the show notes, the
Mhm.
website. What's the best way for them? You said a bunch of smart stuff. What's the best way for somebody to reach out to Derek? What's your
LinkedIn. I'm active on LinkedIn. Derek Baer, DerekBaer. And if you want to email me, DBAER, so dbear at kurlanassociates.com. And I'm sure you'll have this all written out in the show notes.
It'll all be in the show notes. So ping them on LinkedIn, shoot them a note, and maybe pick up a phone and call them. Right? Find his
Maybe pick up a phone. If you utilize your prospecting tools like Zoom Info or Apollo, I guarantee my cell phone number is in there and I will answer, believe it or not.
um, so last question, Derek.
Mhm.
Any relationship, past or present, with cigars? You're a bit of an
My
athlete, I know. So
my last memorable cigar was in Havana, Cuba, at Hotel Nacional, which was, I think, like Frank Sinatra stayed there. Winston Churchill. It was a soup. Are you familiar with this hotel? Have you heard of it?
it is the quintessential hotel in Havana.
I think I think in the 40s they hosted a very well known mob conference there as well. That's what I think.
It is where they all hung out. Is where they tried to figure out a way to put all the casinos and hotels.
Yes, yeah.
Right, the last scene, well, not the last scene, but one of the scenes from Godfather 2 is based on a true story, that they were all there trying to, you know, get the deal put together, and then Fidel's guys sort of stormed the castle, if you will. So you had a cigar in Hotel Nacional. This
I had
is
a cigar there, and it was notably different than any cigar that I've had in the U.S. Like without question. And I'm not a, what do you call it, a cigar aficionado? Is that what you'd say?
that's a term, yeah.
It's a term. It was noticeably different and noticeably enjoyable. But that was my last memorable cigar scenario.
Do you have a Cuba Libre with that, or
I don't know. I don't recall. And I'm guilty of being the person. It could have been a brand that is very well known and that I would be lucky to have tried, but I wouldn't have known the difference. I just know that it was very, very enjoyable.
it is it's a different tobacco. We got the seeds all over the place, but the reason I know that it's different is I was walking. My wife and I will go out for like a walk, like, kind of like a hike, and I take a cigar for a walk. She hates cigars, but I'm respectful of where the smoke's going. So I was smoking a Bolivar from Cuba, and she's like, "What are you smoking?" And I'm like, "Why?" And she's like, "It smells different." And I'm like, "Okay, what do you mean it smells different?" Well, it smells like the cigars that my opa smoked when we would go for walks in Germany. And like, "Oh, really? Do you remember what he smoked?" No, no, they're big, long. Okay, well, this is a Cuban cigar, and he did a little research with her mom, and they smoke Cuban cigars. So she could tell
Yeah.
that the smell was different than the normal cigar that I smoke. And I don't smoke shitty cigars. Um, I mean, I do sometimes, but normally I don't.
Yeah.
And but she could tell the difference. So that your point is 100% valid. There is something different about their their earth, the soil, the air. It's different because
Yeah.
it is special. So
It
well,
was.
you're the first guy who's had a cigar at Hotel Nacional in Cuba. So thank you.
Well, it was wasted on me. I'm probably the of all the cigar people out there, I'm probably the least educated, but I can assure you that I appreciated that moment.
Awesome. Dude, thank you. I appreciate this. This was a lot of fun. We had a lot of value. Thank you again.
Thank you. And if you ever want to extend, I would love to do a number 2.
Got it. Well, I think we'll do that. Let's come up with a good topic. Appreciate it.